The opinions expressed are those of the host. The material is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it is not intended as an endorsement for any specific investment. Visit crestmontpw.com for more details.
Welcome to the Ascent. This is Sam McGee with Crestmont Private Wealth. I'm the CEO and owner, and we have offices in Houston and Boerne, Texas, One River Way in Houston on the west side, and 604 South Main Street, which we absolutely love, our historic Dinger homestead that we restored a couple years ago. If you haven't noticed it, it's because there's a big bush blocking it as you travel south on Main, but slow down, take a look. It's kind of a cute little place. We'd love to see you come on in. So today we're going to talk a little bit about aging parents. Now, this is probably on the scale of talking about death, taxes, weather, some other real exciting topics, but it's important. The cycle of life, you don't think you're ever going to get old. And lo and behold, here we are. Baron, we're in our 50s. Well, I'm not yet. I'm close. Sorry, Baron. But you get older. And when you get older, some considerations really change financially from a wealth management perspective and also family dynamics. And so one of the things that I wanted to share today was some experiences that we've had at Crestmont Private Wealth, also back when I was in banking over 15 years ago, and just impart a little wisdom, some things for you to be thinking about, little nuggets as you're listening to this show, whether you happen to be, in your 70s and, you're maybe fully gray or getting there, or maybe you're in your 50s and slowing down a little bit like I am, getting injured every time you go to sports, or maybe you're in your 30s and you've got older parents and you're wondering, oh my gosh, what do I need to be thinking about? We're going to talk about a few topics here. One, we're going to talk about legal and documentation, so real exciting stuff, but important. We're going to talk a little bit about income and cash flow, healthcare and insurance, housing and lifestyle, and then fraud protection. Big topic. And if we have time in the show, we only have 13 minutes, we're going to talk about family communication. We got to work that in there. Super important. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick this off. We're going to go ahead and talk about really from the perspective of someone who is maybe within 10 years of their expected mortality. Okay, so in the United States, you can go look up your expected population mortality based off your date of birth, and it ranges anywhere from the late 70s to the late 80s depending on when you were born and lifestyle and all these things. So we're going to assume that what we're talking about here is things to be really considering as you or someone you love enters into those final stages of life. One of the things you definitely want to be sure that your family member has or you have is a power of attorney. Someone that you trust or they trust that can make financial and medical decisions if they become unable to. That is probably one of the most missed things outside of a will. A lot of people know they need to get a will, but they don't think about, gosh, what if I was in a car wreck, or what if I developed early onset dementia or Alzheimer's? You got to have a power of attorney and give it some thought. Make sure that you get that done and legally documented by an attorney. And same thing in the same vein, having medical directives, healthcare directives to physicians, advanced directive, things that, don't go right. And gosh, you don't want to put your family in a position where they have to make really big, tough decisions. And for purposes of the show being early on a Saturday morning, I won't go into examples of that, but you can imagine what that could be. Of course, having a will, very important to ensure that your estate documents are updated and they reflect your current wishes. And also, kind of a missed thing too commonly missed is beneficiary designations. At Crestmont Private Wealth, we do routine audits for our clients of this. Every one of our clients, when they become a client, we will audit to make sure that they have these things in place. And if they don't, we make recommendations to lawyers in the community where we serve so they can go and get these implemented. So if you're listening to this and you're going, you know what, I'm a wealthy individual, wealthy family, I've got a mom who doesn't have a will and my dad has passed. Well, forward this show. It's on iHeartRadio, all the other major podcasts. It comes out on Sunday. And if you happen to not be able to find it at the Ascent, you can email us at info@crestmontpw.com and we will send you a copy. Next up is income and cash flow. Everybody knows Social Security is something that you earn over your lifetime, and then you've got to decide when you're going to take benefits. You could do that as early as 62. You could delay to 70. Big deal, right? So huge differences in income amounts. And this is where you have to really consider hereditary components of your DNA, how long you think you could live, even though you don't know, you're not God. But you've got to consider that. You got to consider your lifestyle. And, that's a pretty big decision to work with an advisor on, is making sure that you time up your Social Security correctly and the spousal benefits piece as well. So if you're listening to this, you haven't elected Social Security, or maybe you've got an aging parent that is getting closer to that late age where they got to make that decision, forward them the show as well. Okay, so I'm going to skip over the healthcare and insurance just for a moment and maybe come back to that. Let's talk about a big one. Let's talk about family communication. I feel like I've seen it all with different styles, families of origin, different ways that people communicate about money. And it is bizarre. I'm going to be honest. It is bizarre. There are folks that are very open, almost like a ER doctor would be about blood. Just kind of like, hey, it's money, not a big deal because we're used to talking about it. And then there's families where it is taboo. Like, oh, we don't want to talk about that. There is a healthy strike of balance between the two. Obviously, with fraud and scams and things that run rampant, you've got to be careful. You have to be private about your wealth. But on the flip side, if you're not communicating with your parents, or you're the parent not communicating with your kids, and you happen to have a large portfolio or a generous amount of land or a closely held business that has a ton of value, and you have not taken the step to be really transparent about your wishes, your finances, and your expectations, you're not helping your family, because it's going to be a guessing game if you become incapacitated, or worse yet, if you were to pass. So consider having an annual family meeting. That's something we really encourage at Crestmont Private Wealth. We actually have family billing schedules where you can have 3 generations of family that get a little economy of scale with our tiered billing schedule for advice. But we will also offer up a family meeting. And that's obviously tailored to the family. There's maybe some knowledge gaps. Maybe there's some hot buttons or triggers that you kind of have to avoid as the advisor or the family that need to be known in advance by the matriarch, patriarch. But transparency is so important. Who's going to get that 1968 pink Mustang? Who's going to get dad's classic nickel-plated shotgun or something? These kind of things are really, really important, that you specify those wishes in your estate plan, but also just have a conversation. Now, shared access. Now, this is something that's also really important. And if you're listening to this and you happen to have an investment account somewhere, really anywhere, there's something called a trusted contact. It does not give the trusted contact ability to transact on your account. It doesn't give them authority. But what it does do is it gives your advisor or the custodian the ability to reach out to a trusted contact if something's kind of not right. Now, you've got to have a justification for it. It can't just be, Barron kind of looked at me funny today. I need to call his trusted contact and talk about his finances. No, that's not what it means. It means if you have someone that has a regular spending pattern that's pretty normal, and all of a sudden they start pulling out hundreds of thousands of dollars out of their portfolio, and it's going off to some unnamed charity that's not even a 501c3, that's a red flag. Okay, so have a trusted contact within your family for every account. Parents, siblings, make sure you have that, because if you don't have that, there's really not a whole lot that can be done other than the advisor raises it with their compliance, which obviously is a safeguard, but have a trusted contact. Shared access is also something I think that's important in this day and age. There's tracking devices like Life 360 that are really made for my generation with teenage kids and younger kids, and especially ones that start driving, which I've experienced that this year. Actually, a lot of freedom in that, Baron. It's pretty awesome. But think about it from the perspective of maybe aging parents. Now, that's delicate because they may not like that, but you've got to really think about, hey, maybe you're getting into your late 80s and, Life 360, not an endorsement, it's just one app, one example, will actually have crash detection on it. It would have things like fraud protection on it. And you know where your loved one is. And I just can't imagine being in a situation where I have maybe a parent that has gone missing because they had early onset dementia. It'd be horrible. So that's just something to consider and important to think about. Fraud protection. Last, really all we have time for today is to talk about this, and I think this is a really important one. So fraud is on the rise. When you think about the things that AI can do today, and it is unbelievable. I mean, it just takes somebody with a premium account of a certain program to come up with a fake receipt or a fake notice or a fake letterhead and even voice. One thing to really think about, especially with your advisor and your advisory firm that you work with, make sure that you have dual authentication on every account. Make sure that they don't allow third-party wires, even though they may be able to do it. I don't recommend it. I think it's a bad idea. Should be first party, meaning from your account to your account at your bank. Just too many potential problems there with fraud and it being on the rise like it is. And it's just so easy for people to get scammed. And so as you get older, you definitely miss a step and maybe not be as sharp as you used to be. You certainly have wisdom. But gosh, these fraudsters these days are really sophisticated. And the elderly are definitely a target. Young and older are targets. And I've seen it countless times just this year where we've thwarted some potential scams that come our way as a family. And you've just got to be on high alert all the time. As you're thinking about maybe an older parent, set them up with fraud protection. Set them up with scam awareness to regularly discuss the common fraud schemes that are targeting seniors. And also consider consolidating your accounts to fewer institutions and simplify your finances. If you've got money spread out all over the place, it's kind of like having 3 storage units. Can you imagine that? Like, hey, which key goes to which storage unit? I don't know. Is it the brown key or the red key? Not that I have any personal experience with that. My wife right now is cringing. We actually have a couple storage units right now because we're in the middle of a move. Oh, so embarrassing. But it is important that you don't have money just scattered all over the place. It's just more passwords to keep up with, more stuff to keep up with. And so those are some of the things to be thinking about. And in summary, we're talking about legal and documentation for seniors, making sure that you've got a power of attorney, medical directives, healthcare directives, a will, beneficiary designations. We talked a little bit about Social Security, making sure you get the timing right on that. We also talked a little bit about family communication, just making sure that you sit down, talk with your parents or your grandparents or your children. Make sure you have open communication that you're comfortable with. So hopefully those of you that are listening to this, maybe you've been putting off this conversation. Maybe this is a conversation you don't want to have. Maybe you do want to lean on an advisor. At Crestmont Private Wealth, we pride ourselves on working with wealthy families and working with the entire family. Super important to make sure you're planning that intergenerational wealth, but also protecting it as well. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. And if you have any questions whatsoever, give us a call or email me at info@crestmontpw.com. Have a wonderful weekend and God bless.